The transformation of Gerald Whitman became neighborhood legend. The construction equipment disappeared overnight. The health inspectors ceased their harassment. Maya's eviction notice was rescinded with a formal written apology. 4 days later, Maya signed the final papers making Neighborhood Perk officially hers, with Frank staying on as a part-time advisor and full-time storyteller. But the story didn't end there. Under intense public and legal scrutiny, Gerald's company underwent a dramatic restructuring. Faced with potential criminal charges, he accepted a consent decree requiring community approval for all future projects in the district and significant financial contributions to affordable housing initiatives. The most surprising development came 3 months later when Gerald himself walked into the cafe, not with bluster, but with a tentative request to speak with Maya. "Your legal checkmate cost me millions," he admitted, stirring his coffee nervously, "but saved me from crossing lines that would have cost me everything." Maya's revolution spread beyond their neighborhood. Her case study became required reading at her alma mater. Sophia's in-depth report on development tactics sparked investigations in cities nationwide. Councilman Washington's new ordinance protecting small businesses from predatory practices passed unanimously. The cafe itself transformed into something more than Maya had originally envisioned, part business, part community center, and part symbol of justice. Every month, she hosted Know Your Rights workshops for local entrepreneurs and residents, teaching them to recognize when entitled behavior crossed legal boundaries and how to effectively stand their ground. A year later, when a luxury chain attempted to pressure the bookstore next door into selling, the owners simply posted a sign in their window, proudly protected by the Maya Chen precedent. The chain's representatives vanished within days. Maya never raised her voice, never resorted to Gerald's tactics of intimidation. Her power came from preparation, knowledge, and the strategic patience to let entitled people reveal their own vulnerabilities. She proved that sometimes the most devastating response to those who believe rules don't apply to them is simply to enforce the rules that already exist. The plaque Frank gifted her on the cafe's first anniversary under her ownership became its unofficial motto, displayed prominently above the espresso machine. Be polite, be professional, but always have a plan to take down everyone in the room. The weekend brought Maya's worst fears to life. A massive excavator mysteriously appeared overnight, blocking the cafe's main entrance. Health inspectors showed up 3 times citing anonymous complaints. Frank called in a panic when the water was mysteriously shut off despite his bills being paid. By Monday morning, Maya found an eviction notice on her apartment door claiming lease violations that didn't exist. The property management company, recently acquired by Whitman Properties. That afternoon, Gerald sauntered into Maya's law office without an appointment, nodding appreciatively at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Impressive," he said, uninvited, lowering himself into the chair across from her desk. "You know, you could afford 10 cafes with what I pay my attorneys. Why fight me on this?" Maya closed her laptop slowly. "Because, Mr. Whitman, some things aren't for sale." Gerald's practiced charm vanished. "Everything has a price. I've crushed people with far more resources than you. By next week, that old man will be begging me to take that dump off his hands. Is that a threat?" "It's a promise, sweetheart. You're playing checkers. I'm playing chess." Maya waited until Gerald reached her office door before responding. "Actually, Mr. Whitman, I'm playing Go, a game with exponentially more strategic possibilities than chess. A game about building territory through patient positioning rather than capturing pieces." She smiled. "A game where underestimation is fatal." That night, Maya didn't go home. Instead, she set up a war room in her firm's conference center with 3 critical allies: Sophia Reyes, an investigative journalist whose expose on tenant harassment had won a Pulitzer last year; Marcus Washington, a city councilman whose seat had been saved when Maya defended him pro bono against a copyright violation; and Zoe Park, the firm's legendary research director who could find dirt on a saint. "We have 5 days until my closing," Maya told them, distributing coffee. "Let's see what Mr. Whitman has been hiding." 3 days later, Gerald strutted into Neighborhood Perk for his morning ambush of Frank, only to find the cafe unexpectedly bustling. Local news cameras adjusted lighting while community members filled every seat. At the center of it all stood Maya, composed in a crisp charcoal suit. "Mr. Whitman." "Perfect timing," Maya called out, causing heads to turn. "We were just discussing your company's fascinating business practices." Gerald froze, recognizing Councilman Washington near the counter and the reporter whose face he'd seen on magazine covers. "What is this circus about?" Maya gestured to the presentation screen showing aerial photographs of Gerald's developments alongside permit applications. "We were discussing how your Riverside Condos project claimed to preserve 40% green space, while satellite imagery shows only 12%, a violation worth approximately $4.3 million in fines." Gerald's face drained of color as Maya clicked to the next slide. "Or perhaps you prefer to discuss the asbestos improperly removed from the West Side Theater renovation, or the 17 separate fire code violations across your properties. Or maybe," she lowered her voice, "the shell companies funneling investments from questionable overseas sources that the Financial Crimes Unit might find interesting." The journalist scribbled furiously as Gerald lunged forward, only to be met with the immovable presence of Marcus Washington. "You set me up," Gerald hissed. "No, Mr. Whitman. You did that yourself every time you decided rules didn't apply to you." Maya handed him a folder. "This contains evidence of everything I've mentioned and more. The originals are already with the appropriate authorities." Gerald fumbled for his phone. "My lawyers will." "Your lawyers will advise you to cooperate fully," Maya interrupted. "They're receiving the same information as we speak. The smart move now is damage control." For the first time in his career, Gerald Whitman found himself cornered with no leverage, no connections to exploit, and no way to bully his way out. "What do you want?" he finally asked, voice barely audible. Maya's answer surprised everyone. "I want you to build better, legal, ethical, community-minded. I'll be watching to make sure you do." Maya Chen clutched her coffee cup tightly as she rounded the corner toward Neighborhood Perk, the cafe that was supposed to be hers in 48 hours. Instead of seeing Frank's welcoming smile through the window, she froze at the sight of a red-faced man in an expensive suit pounding his fist on the counter. "Listen to me, old man," the stranger's voice carried through the glass. "My offer is double what she's giving you. Double. You'd be an idiot to turn that down." Maya pushed through the door just as Frank, the 72-year-old owner who had been serving her morning coffee for 7 years, stood his ground with surprising strength for his frail frame. "That cafe girl is finally here," the suited man sneered without turning around. "Perfect timing. Run along, sweetheart. The adults are talking business." Maya placed her leather briefcase on a nearby table with a deliberate thud. "Actually, I'm Maya Chen, the cafe girl with a Harvard law degree and partnership at Caldwell and Schmidt." She extended her business card with surgical precision. "And you are?" The man's momentary confusion gave way to dismissive laughter. "Gerald Whitman. Maybe you've heard of Whitman Properties. We're reshaping this neighborhood." "Destroying it, you mean?" Frank muttered. Gerald's eyes narrowed as he sized up Maya again. "Look, I don't care what kind of ambulance you chase during the week. This cafe would be better as a high-end wine bar, and I get what I want in this neighborhood." What Gerald failed to recognize was the slight curl at the corner of Maya's mouth, the same expression her legal opponents had learned to fear right before she dismantled their cases. She hadn't spent a decade protecting independent artists and small businesses from corporate predators to lose her own dream to another entitled bully. "It's been a pleasure, Mr. Whitman," Maya said, her voice silk over steel. "I look forward to our future interactions." The cafe fell silent as Gerald glanced between Maya and Frank, seemingly recalculating his approach. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the decades-old photographs lining the walls, snapshots of neighborhood history that Frank had carefully preserved, a legacy that meant more than money to both Frank and Maya. "Look, Ms. Chen," Gerald softened his tone, though his eyes remained cold. "Business is business. This place is charming, but it's underperforming. My team has analyzed the financials. Frank here is barely breaking even." He gestured around the cafe with manicured hands. I can triple the revenue with minimal renovation. Frank's weathered hands trembled slightly as he poured himself a cup of coffee. It's not about the money, Mr. Whitman. Never has been. Maya moved closer to Frank, subtly positioning herself between the elderly man and the developer. She'd witnessed this tactic before, the sudden shift from aggression to calculated reasonableness, designed to make the opposing party feel unreasonable for not compromising. The cafe's financials aren't public record, Maya observed, her analytical mind already connecting dots. How exactly did your team analyze them? Gerald's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Industry standards, market research, or perhaps through the bank loan officer who conveniently plays golf with you on Sundays? Maya asked, watching Gerald's expression carefully. The same officer who mysteriously delayed Frank's loan refinancing paperwork last month? A middle-aged woman at a corner table lowered her newspaper, suddenly interested in the conversation. Maya recognized her as the editor of the local community paper. Gerald buttoned his jacket, all pretense of friendliness evaporating. You're making accusations you can't substantiate, counselor. Dangerous ground. Not accusations, Mr. Whitman. Questions. I have plenty more. Maya's phone chimed with a calendar reminder. But they'll have to wait. I have a deposition in 30 minutes where, coincidentally, I'm representing 3 small business owners forced out of their locations by questionable tactics. She picked up her briefcase. Perhaps we can continue this conversation after the closing. I'll bring copies of the property transfer documents and the detailed timeline of all interactions with financial institutions regarding this property. As Maya headed toward the door, she placed a reassuring hand on Frank's shoulder and whispered something that made the old man stand a little straighter. The bell above the door chimed as she exited, leaving Gerald standing awkwardly in a cafe where every customer now stared at him with undisguised suspicion.